Bob Schumacher was one of my students 20 years ago. What did he do? He went and checked that list, and he found a property on the forfeited lands list. He paid $2,900 for it. Okay, did a little tidy up and fix up, ended up renting it, sold it a few years later for $100,000.
Hey, welcome, and thank you to Transforming Oklahoma Tax Deed Sales into Wealth. This is where we answer your questions you sent in. Well, we don't answer them. Ted Thomas does. We have Ted Thomas here, who's America's tax lien and tax deed authority. Ted, we're going to get right into it. This is from Valentina. She was on Twitter, and she left a question. She says, I'm confused. When researching Oklahoma tax deed auctions, I keep seeing the word resale auction. Is that the same thing as a tax deed auction?
So Oklahoma is now called a tax deed state. Prior to 10 years ago, it was a tax lien state. So in my time, they sold tax liens in Oklahoma when we started. And they would sell a tax lien, and they paid all the way up to a magic interest rate of 8%. Woo, 8%. Compare that with a place like Iowa that pays 24%, and you'll see why I'm making fun of it a little bit. All right, now it's changed to a tax deed state. But basically in Oklahoma, I don't know what it's going to be in the next state, but in Oklahoma, they have the first sale and they have a resale. It's the same type of auction.
So in the end, Ted, what you're saying is the resale auction and tax deed auction really aren't the same thing. It's just, it's property that wasn't sold here is now being sold here.
Well, in Oklahoma, you're absolutely right. So the two auctions are the same. Now, that could be different in another state. Resale could mean something altogether different. Commissioner's sale could be something different. It's going to be each state and each county is allowed to use whatever verbiage and whatever kind of narrative they want. But you are absolutely right. The way you stated the question, you're absolutely right. They're both the same.
All right, Ted, this next question is from Deshaun. He was on LinkedIn, and he just wants to know, does Oklahoma have a set month that their tax sales take place?
Oh, that's a difficult one. They take place in the month of June in Oklahoma.
Perfect. That's June, Deshaun. Don't miss it. Next question. This comes from Omar. Omar was on YouTube. He asks, is there a redemption period in Oklahoma, or do you win the property at auction?
Oklahoma is selling a tax deed, and a tax deed means you are going to get the property if you win the bid. They're going to deed the property to you. Now, the big thing to be concerned about is what kind of deed you're going to get. Are you going to get a treasurer's deed or a commissioner's deed or whatever? Because that deed is really a quitclaim deed. And if you get a quitclaim deed, you've got a deed to the property, but the county's not going to tell you that they're going to warranty the condition of that property. And the county's going to tell you, we don't know what defects there are on the property. So just because you got a deed doesn't mean you're going to be able to have a marketable title. You're probably going to have to think about doing a quiet title report.
Elia from Twitter, she says she lives in Canada. You have international friends here, Ted. She lives in Canada. Can I attend and bid at an Oklahoma tax deed auction?
Okay, this is a really unusual question. They're asking, can Canadians buy in Oklahoma? Well, let me say this. I've got a lot of friends in Canada, and we in the United States have a lot of friends in Canada. All of us do. But for some reason, there was some difficulty in the past, and the legislature in the state of Oklahoma said Canadians can't buy in the state of Oklahoma. I don't know if that would stand up constitutionally if someone sued, but who cares? Oklahoma really needs everybody from all over the world to buy, because if they don't get rid of those tax defaulted property, they're not going to be able to pay the county employees. So if you're a Canadian, you're offended by all that, don't be offended. There's plenty of tax lien certificates around the country.
Next question. This comes from Caleb. He was on Instagram, Ted, and he asked, what types of properties go up for auction in Oklahoma?
Okay, so what types of property? Well, at tax defaulted auctions, everything under the sun comes up. So let's start out. So you could find single family homes. You could find small apartment properties. You could find small office buildings. You could find land with row crops on it. You could find open range land. You could find any type of property that isn't owned by the government, like isn't owned by a school or a church. All of those properties are available at tax defaulted auctions.
Pretty much sounds like everything. All right, Ted.
Everything.
Last question. This comes from Diamond. She was on YouTube. What happens to the properties that do not sell at auction in Oklahoma? Is there a leftover list?
There's a huge opportunity here if you understand it. So let's see if we can get an understanding of that in just a minute or so. So if they have an auction, snows that day, nobody comes in and buys the property. Now what are they going to do? They'll probably put it up and try and sell it the next auction. If they don't sell it then, they've got to do something else. So they're going to put it on a list. These are properties that didn't sell at auction. Well, what if it was a perfectly good property? Okay, first of all, the guy forfeited a perfectly good property. Now, I don't know why. Maybe he died. I don't know what happened. All right, the property's forfeited to the county. Now, it snowed that day, so the property didn't sell. So this might be a real good deal, but it's on the wrong list, and they don't publish that list. So that list is at the county, so you're going to have to know that that list is there, which is why it's a very good question. So you need to just call and say, what happened? Call the county and say to the treasurer or the treasurer's assistant, what happens to the properties that didn't sell? And they'll say, oh, they put it on the surplus lands list or the forfeited lands list, whatever. Now, don't just say, oh, this is a bunch of crap. It's not. This could be a valuable property. For example, Bob Schumacher, who's was one of my students 20 years ago, what did he do? He went and checked that list, and he found a property on the forfeited lands list in South Carolina. He paid $2,900 for it. Okay, did a little tidy up and fix up, ended up renting it, sold it a few years later for $100,000. He bought it on the forfeited lands list for $2,900, resold it for $102,000. So it's what you know. See, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why you're on the YouTube learning.
I want to remind you, if you have any questions about tax liens, tax deeds in Oklahoma or any state, leave them in the comments below, and you may be in a future video when Ted is going to answer that. But Ted, right now, tell them about that calendar of yours.
Okay, well, nationwide, we have 3,000 counties. That's a lot. So I'm going to keep track of 3,000. It's impossible. All right. We also have 1,500 counties. All right. What you can do is you can call or you can write to or you can email every one of those counties, and you can say, I'd like to have a list. I'd like to have a list of tax defaulted property. And they'll put that in the local newspaper. They'll make a list like that. This happens to be Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. There's over 30,000 certificates in this one. Okay. But all of the counties will have something to sell. Los Angeles, this is a list from Los Angeles. Okay. So there'll be 1,000 properties that are going to sell on that list. Okay. There'll be another one. Let me find one from New York. Here's one from New York. Okay. So here's a list of properties that are going to sell in New York. Let me open it up so you can see. All right. So all those lists are available. But how are you going to keep track of 3,000 and then 1,500 counties? Really tough job, right? So this has always been a challenge for all of my clients. So we took the time and we created an auction calendar. And it's going to be below me and you're going to be able to see it. All right. And when you go there, those are the counties that have auctions right now. So all the counties are going to have auctions. It'll tell you how many properties, and then you could look up every one of those properties. All right. So that's all I'm going to tell you about it right now. But this could get you so you could access 100 million properties in the United States just by having that calendar. Pretty good deal, right? All right. So that beats can you imagine getting newspapers from 3,000 counties and looking stuff up? Well, that's the system that was invented 200 years ago. So we have accelerated the whole thing, and you can see in front of you all the counties that are having auctions right now. I'm Ted Thomas.
Make sure to check it out, everybody. Click right in the link below in descriptions. Thanks for watching.